Things we need to learn. Okay, but I love that you guys got into this and really started to think about what are different aspects in the way that you communicate that can be improved upon, or just like to strengthen the positive ways of the way that you speak and communicate with other people. Okay, so I wanted to focus on this, the potential that we have in this month to reveal miracles. One of the teachings of Kabbalah is that, when we go through every month, and like a lot of times we think that, Passover is just a traditional celebration where we're celebrating the historical significance of something that happened thousands of years ago. And that's not what it is. Like, Passover happened because that time of year is a time for revealing miracles, and every year around this time we have the potential to change something dramatic in our lives, to completely transform ourselves, and we can do that. And so, what happened in Passover? In Passover, there was the splitting of the Red Sea, right? Where the Jews left Egypt. I'm fast forwarding a bit along the story because we know what happened. But when they got to the Red Sea, they got to a point where there was no going back because they were chasing them behind them, and there was no going forward because there was an ocean in front of them. So they were sandwiched into a predicament where they were blocked and they had nowhere to go. So, but then the sea split. The sea split. And so I want to talk about how can we split the sea in our life? What are things that we're challenged with in our own lives where we need to move forward, and whether it's in our relationships, in our personal growth, in our career, whatever it is in our lives that we're trying to move forward with, but we see a block, and we're not able to see how we can get through it. We can't go backwards, we can't go forwards. It's like what do we do? It's going to have to take a miracle for this transformation to happen, to be able to break through to the other side. So we have a clue on how to create miracles. I mean, it sounds cool to say, this time of year is time for miracles, but how do we actually do that? How do we actually create miracles in our lives? What's the secret? So I want to share some ideas with you. The month of Nissan comes from the word of Nes, which is the letter Nun and Samech. Nes means what in Hebrew? Miracle. So the letter Nun yes.
Samech is also the symbol of a woman.
Is it?
Because it's round?
Because it's round, right?
Yeah.
And the Samech doesn't appear in the Torah until Eve comes in. There's no word of Samech in the Torah.
Really? I never knew that.
Wow.
What was the word?
Any word. There's no Samech.
There's no Samech until she comes in?
Until Eve.
That's so interesting. I'm telling you, this whole class is going to have a feminine spin on it. So we're going to just bring the women into it. But so Nun is considered a negative letter because it represents falling. Like there's this prayer that we say 3 times a day in Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv. There's a prayer called Ashrei, which is a prayer that goes according to the alphabetical order of the Hebrew alphabet, and every single letter is included except for the letter Nun. And so the question is why? Why did King David not include the letter Nun in such an important prayer? They say if you say Ashrei 3 times a day, you're guaranteed Gan Eden. It's like considered a super powerful prayer. But the letter Nun is left out. So why? Because Nun represents falling. It's considered like falling, meaning like going down and like not being able to get back up. So Nun is not on its own. It's accompanied with the letter Samech. And Samech means lismoch. When you say in Hebrew lismoch on mishu, means to depend on somebody. So Samech means to depend. So you need both. You need the falling, and then you need someone to depend on, to pull you out of that, to elevate you. So Samech also is interpreted for elevating. It's not just supporting, but it's also elevating. So what's the lesson there? Like, because this is what Kabbalah is all about. Like, you can learn so much just from the letters, just how to understand a deeper concept just from the letters. And what it means is that you need to go through the falling in order to go back up into the rising. That's part of the process of life. Like you can't just always like. There's very few people whose life is like a straight arrow, like straight up. Usually it's like up, down, up, down, up, down. It's like a gradual sort of progression. But there's always this pattern of like a going down and going up, going down and going up. Like, and that's what makes it interesting. That's like what makes life so like exciting is you never have a guarantee of like everything going your way. You can do everything to make it good, but you have to enjoy that process of falling, because then when you're rising back up again, you can appreciate it. And if you don't go through that struggle, then you don't really appreciate it when you're succeeding. So I think it's really important to have that in mind. And that's, I think, what creates miracles. Is because like I said, nes, which is the word for miracle, is nun, which is falling, and samech, which means supporting. So you need the falling and the rising to create a miracle. So how do we apply that in our lives? What would be an example of applying this concept in our life? Anybody want to take a crack at it?
What is the question?
The question is how I'm trying. My theory is that you can create miracles in your life by embracing the process of falling and then rising. So, has anyone had an experience they want to share, or an idea of how you were in a certain period of your life where you were falling, but that was just an opportunity for you to go back up and like rise again and elevate yourself in any way?
Well, I think that I frequently have experiences with people, now that I'm a little bit older, that in which maybe like 5-10 years ago, I would have been agitated or angry.
Yeah.
But because maybe some of the behavior that they're exhibiting is stuff that I've been through myself at this point in my life and have moved past, it just creates either pity or indifference and just compassion.
Yeah. That's cool. I also wanted to talk about, in the Gemara it says that there are 3 things in life that we need to get in life, and it's like the splitting of the Red Sea for Hashem to give it to us. Does anybody know what those 3 things are?
Getting a husband or wife.
Yeah, finding your zivug is like the splitting of the Red Sea, and what else? I guess. I'll help you out a little. So parnasa, like sustenance and money, is also like splitting the Red Sea, and also health and children. Having children and having a long life and finding the right partner are things that are really, really difficult, and that it's like splitting the Red Sea. So for me, splitting the Red Sea represents things that are really difficult to like overcome. But this is the month when we can overcome it. How do we do that? So we spoke a little bit about miracle making. But another key thing that we need to do is we need to break out around personal Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is Egypt in Hebrew, but again, we'll do the Kabbalistic word game. And Mitzrayim represents Maim, like if you split up Mitzrayim into 2 words, it's Maim Tsar, which means what in English? What does Maim Tsar mean?
Narrow waters.
Narrow waters. So it represents that we all have in our own lives things that are limiting us, whether they're physically limiting, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Like we have certain blocks. We have certain things in our lives that are keeping us from moving forward. It's really, really challenging. And we need to figure out how to overcome those challenges. So for example, how could you be limited mentally? Like, what could be an example of being limited mentally?
No confidence.
Like low self-esteem?
Low self-esteem.
Low self, exactly.
Your perspective, if it's, too ingrained where you're not able to see.
Like a limited perspective, like not being able to see the full picture.
Yeah.
Right, or just sometimes you see things the way you're used to seeing things, so yeah, it could be
Or having no perspective also.
Having no perspective. So it's like closed-mindedness almost, right? What would be an example of being limited physically? How could a person be limited physically in their life?
If you're like in a wheelchair,
If a person's in a wheelchair, yeah.
I guess an injury. If you got a friend of mine, he was a very talented guitar player. He got into a horrible car accident. He was blinded, so the music's like his life now. So,
Wow.
So that's really getting him to get some of the morning, gets him through the day.
Wow.
You can still play music?
He can still play lead guitar. He's actually even better now than he was before.
Now that
Yeah,
he's
so-
blind.
Yeah, it's
Because
really,
he's so like in tune to the
Yeah.
music.
Wow.
Okay, so what would be an example of being limited emotionally?
Someone who's in grief.
Someone who's in grief and it's like hard for them to get out of it.
There's a lot of things, I think.
Like
The
what?
ability to have the risk of loving and receiving love.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. Lawrence, you're such a star. You have like all these insights.
I don't know about that.
We're gonna have to answer it.
So you're saying people who are limited emotionally it's difficult for them to give love and receive love. Yeah?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
I don't know which one is more difficult.
That we could have a whole class on that. Maybe that could be our next class. We'll have a love
Some
class.
people are scared to
I'll
receive
be
it,
there.
or they're scared of losing what they receive. Maybe people are scared to give it,
Yeah, it's true because they're scared to get hurt.
scared to get hurt.
Or if they've been hurt in the past and they don't want to get hurt again, so they don't want to be vulnerable. There's a lot of different things.
Or
Yeah,
some
John?
people only are able to give love and can't take love. In other words, they have to be the givers and they can't accept it because they feel like they have a need to do for the other person, and I think that's love has to be a two-way street.
Exactly. So funny. I was just talking with about that with one of my friends. It's it's a very powerful thing. The whole concept of opening yourself up to really receive a person, and I think all of it comes down to just a sense of openness, like releasing sort of like the limits the constraints that we put on ourselves, and I think that's really why I love this teaching so much, because it's about self-awareness. It's about how do we look at our lives and see these blocks, like what's blocking us. If we go through our days and we don't recognize these patterns, but like I really hope that a lot of people take that away from this class, that we all have our own personal Egypt that we need to break free from, something that's like slaves. What do slaves have? They have those what do you call those?
Shackles.
Those shackles on their feet that are like dragging them down and keeping them from like moving forward. So what are our shackles? What are the things that are really like keeping us from running, from like moving forward into the best version of our lives that we can manifest. So that was really good. You guys are awesome. You have like such good insights.